Good afternoon, all. Welcome to March's Network Tech Talk. It is wonderful seeing everybody this afternoon, albeit digitally again today. For those of you that have not attended in the past, Central Maine's Network Tech Talk is a monthly event where in our small group setting, founders and leaders share real advice on how they overcame challenges, capitalized on their target market, and developed their product, providing you with actionable insight for your own products and processes. You may find more information about Central Maine Tech Night and our Network Tech Talks at centralmaine.org at the Tech Night tab. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this afternoon. This free event is presented by Central Maine Growth Council and is sponsored by the wonderful teams at CGI, Thomas College's Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation, Valley Beverage, and Bricks Co-working Innovation Space at 10 Water Street, downtown Waterville, Maine. Thank you, Bricks, and we certainly miss seeing everybody in person and enjoying kind of pizza and good conversations together. In addition, I'd like to say hello to the folks that are watching from home or remotely at a later time. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have a wonderful network tech talk with HighByte. Today's tech talk is Industry DataOps Solutions for Industry 4.0 with Mr. John Harrington, Chief Business Officer of HighByte. Today, we'll hear about HighByte is solving persistent data interoperability and security problems faced by industry operations as the first DataOps solution purpose-built to meet the unique requirements of industry assets, products, and processes. HighByte is an industrial software development company located here in Maine, Portland, Maine specifically, building solutions that address data architecture and integration challenges created by Industry 4.0. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a few kind of procedurals here on Zoom tips and tricks to our network tech talk. I would ask attendees to keep muted for now. During Q&A or through the presentation, you are welcome to drop comments into the chat feature. And then we would ask folks to ideally hold off on Q&A towards the end. With that said, I'd like to now welcome, without further ado, John. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Garvin. And Sabrina, thank you for setting this up. Thank you to Central Maine Growth Council for inviting me. We're excited to tell the group our story. Let me just share my slides here, and I'll get started. So my name is John Harrington. I'm here to talk about HighByte. It's an industrial software company based in Portland, Maine. So as I get started, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey myself, and then I'll talk about HighByte's journey, the problems we solve, and then some of the support and organizations that we've been working with here in Maine, and then look forward to questions and discussions further. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Portland, then graduated from high school, went down to school down in Massachusetts for engineering, stayed down there for about 15 years, moved back to Maine in 2004 with my family. At that point, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old daughters, and I was married. So the 4 of us moved up to Portland again, or the Portland area, and been working in the technology field ever since. In fact, for my entire career, my background has been working either in manufacturing companies or industrial companies, or working in software companies that are providing solutions for that field, for manufacturing, for industrial. So that's my background. HighByte was founded by 3 people: Tony Payne, Tori Penrod-Kembra, and myself. The 3 of us had worked together for over 10 years. Prior to founding HighByte, we had worked at a company called Kepler Technologies, which was based in Portland, Maine, still in Portland. But Kepler was acquired in 2016 by a Massachusetts-based company called PTC. So we had about 100 on 20 people that worked at Kepware and are still there now. Um, and so it was a good group. It was a great company to work for. And PTC was a great company based in Massachusetts. But the three of us had decided to leave for various reasons and then got together in August of 2018. And we decided to found HighByte. And we really decided on founding HighByte around the concept of helping manufacturers in their digital transformation. And specifically, our background was on data and really understanding data. That was an area that Kepware is in and had been in, and an area that we continued to hear a lot of challenges. So we founded the company in August 2018, and we've been building ever since. Tony is our CEO. He was the former CEO of Kepware. Tori was the former marketing leader at Kepware and is leading marketing as well as operations. And I had led product management and am now doing product management and business development at HighByte. At this point, we do have a small team. We've got 7 employees, though we're planning on doubling in size this year. In terms of our journey as a company, like I said, we were founded in 2018. There were 3 of us, and after about a month, we decided we really need to be working together. So our very first big decision was to move in at Cloudport, which is a co-working space in Portland. So we continued to work through the next year and a half, 2018 and then 19, and myself and Tori and Tony, we were really focused in 2 areas. One was on market research and market development. So as we did more research and really focused in on the solution we were developing a market, identifying potential customers, potential partners, how we would fit, that sort of thing. The other piece was in that first year and a half was product research and then product development. So that really culminated with 2020, we released our first product. And the company, from a funding perspective, started out with the founders funding the company. And then we did get some awards from MTI. So MTI has been a great partner of ours, Maine Technology Institute, and they have issued us 2 grants. Now, with 2020, we continued to go, and our primary focus on go-to-market and market research and then developing the market was attending conferences and shows. And so I went to a lot of them back in 2019 and early 2020. In fact, I went to one down in Houston in January, another one in Atlanta in February. And like I said, we had released the product in January. And then everything stopped when it came to shows in our go-to-market. It's been an interesting experience over the last 2.5 years, with the last year because of COVID. So COVID hit right about the same time that we closed our first pre-seed round of funding. In that round, we took investment from some local angels, from Maine Venture Fund, a loan from MTI, and we also had a venture capitalist from California that joined too. So from a funding perspective, we then could continue to develop the company, but things really shifted. We did have our first customer win in May, which was awesome. Obviously, from March to May, things had changed dramatically. Fortunately, as the summer moved on, we had a lot more customer activities. But things definitely changed, and we went through March, April, and May were very quiet from a customer perspective. As I always tell people, it felt like all of the customers, all the technical people within a company were really focused on allowing people to work from home, and they stopped working on new projects. Fortunately, since then, things have really picked up on our side. In fact, from November through March of this year, we've added a number of new customers. And our initial customer has expanded the footprint that they're using of our solution. So that's really exciting when they're able to add more. They have more need, they see the value of it, they start rolling it out to additional locations. Over the course of this past year, we've also been adding a lot of new technology to the product. We also moved from Cloudport, which we had largely just outgrown, into a new co-working space in Portland called the Public Works. We moved in here in August because it gave us our own dedicated space with our own exit, which allowed us to continue to work together at some level um, while still being socially distant. So this takes us up to through the end of the year, and actually we're planning on releasing our 1.4 version in early April, so just in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of the company development, both from a market standpoint and customer standpoint, as well as from a product standpoint. The next thing I'd like to get into is what is the problem that we're solving? What is HighByte? So, and I want to start that by taking a step back. I know this is a technology group, but I'm sure that there aren't that many people who are real familiar with manufacturing and what's been going on in the manufacturing industry over the last 5, 10, 20 years. Manufacturing is pretty incredible right now. In fact, this picture that you see there it's actually kind of dated. It's about 5 years old. It was taken at a BMW car assembly plant. If you look closely down in this corner here, you can see a car coming down the line. Here's a door that's being prepped and it will be installed on the car. Interestingly, so this is modern manufacturing. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of computer systems. There's a lot of um, robotics and all this sort of thing going into the manufacturing of this. In fact, this door actually comes into the line from a secondary level. There's a whole secondary conveyor level up above this car assembly line where they deliver the parts directly in to the work cells through the ceiling, if you will. So there's a lot of complexity in modern manufacturing. And one of the things that people talk about that's happening right now as we speak is they talk about the fourth industrial revolution of manufacturing. And where that comes from is the first industrial revolution, of course, was using power. So using windmills and water wheels and then electricity to drive motors and machining and tooling. The second revolution was the assembly line. Of course, Henry Ford, everyone's heard of Henry Ford, and he built the assembly line in how we manufacture vehicles and then adopting that throughout manufacturing. The third industrial revolution of manufacturing was the adoption of automation equipment. And this started back in the 50s and kind of takes us through to the early 2000s. And then the fourth industrial revolution, which is what we talk about happening right now. And that's really taking all of that automation equipment and pulling all that data out and then creating a complete fabric of data throughout a company so that it's not just controlling a piece of machinery, but now people can be sitting in their offices and have access to what's going on in the factory. And those people could be throughout the company or even the entire supply chain have access to information about what's happening. So in terms of automation technology, they've been using automation technology to machine parts, to assemble cars, to test things, to inventory and monitor inventory consumption, to manage the configuration. In fact, if you're purchasing a car, if you're purchasing a computer, many of those are completely configured to order. In fact, every car coming down a line is completely unique from the previous one. And that's that concept of configuration to order is rapidly evolving throughout many of the products that are manufactured today. And of course, we have a lot of robotics. So all of this is sort of automation technology, part of the third industrial revolution, but the fourth is really about merging all of these together. And it's about new concepts. Now, some of you may have heard about the Internet of Things. When it comes to consumer goods, we're talking about smartwatches and smartphones and all the different sensoring technology and whatnot to be able to collect, your heart rate and where you're at when you go out for a run or exercise or do different things, smart doorbells and things like that. When it comes to industrial environments, we talk about the industrial Internet of Things, which is largely the same thing. It's being able to collect data out of the factory and then make it available in digital systems. Those could be systems in the cloud. Those could be systems on your mobile device. Those could be systems in the computer that you sit at and work with. People also talk a lot about cloud analytics. There's all this talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how can we pull together data sets and learn about what's happening and predict what's going to happen based on what's happened in the past in ways that we've never been able to do before. So maybe you take 50 or 100 or 500 different data points and analyze them and identify what's changed in the past, and then use that as a predictor for potential problems coming in the future. Augmented reality, of course, we see that when we talk about games, video games, where we're also using them in manufacturing settings. Augmented reality headsets are being used for training. They're being used for guiding assembly. They're being used for guiding service workers. They're being used for guiding maintenance technicians. So very important and huge advances. Sensors, just the collection of data. You know, if you look at your cell phone, there's tens of sensors on it. And so you've got vibration sensors and light sensors and GPS and microphones and cameras. Well, they're putting the same thing in industrial environments. So we're putting sensors everywhere. A single motor that may be driving a piece of pump, that motor may have a sensor to determine how much power it's consuming. It may also have a vibration sensor, and it may have a speed sensor or a power sensor. You combine all of those and you can determine if the motor is starting to fail. And the idea is, if we can determine that the motor is starting to fail before it fails, then we can order one in, we can replace it, and we don't actually have to stop the line. We don't have to stop 100 workers from working. We don't have to stop all of the machinery from operating just because a single motor failed. We're able to predict it before it happens and then make the necessary changes. So that's, you know, there's been a huge increase in sensors. Of course, we can use wireless sensors at home where we can sense temperature and humidity and all that sort of thing. They're doing the same thing in the industrial setting. People are using mobile devices, and people are then talking about what we call edge analytics. And this is something that's just starting to roll out today, where people are trying to compute and analyze things not in the cloud, but actually on the line, actually very close to what's happening, because maybe the data is coming so fast and they don't want to push it all up to the cloud, or they need to respond much, much faster than you can if you were to send it all the way to the internet, have it compute, and then bring it back. Perfect example of edge analytics is automotive vehicles. Obviously, that's not in manufacturing, but automotive vehicles. If you're driving down the road and you want your car to slam on the brakes if it detects something in front of you, you don't want it to send all that data up into Amazon's cloud services, compute it, determine that you need to stop, and then send it down. You really need the car to be able to do that computation in the car. And that's what we call edge analytics. We're doing the same thing in manufacturing. We need to be able to compute. Do we speed up a motor? Do we slow it down? Do we speed up a robot? Do we slow it down? How do we change things based on what's going on? And in order to do that, we need edge analytics. These are all trends that are happening in the manufacturing industry. These are all trends that are leveraging, in many ways, a lot of technology that came out of the consumer industry, but now being applied into industrial settings, into manufacturing, into windmills, into solar farms, into water and wastewater facilities. And this is what's causing and enabling the fourth industrial revolution. Ultimately, the goal is, how can we get our employees to make better decisions faster? And how can we automate, so take the load off of them in some of those decisions? But ultimately, whether you're an employee on the factory line who's torquing a bolt on a car, or whether you're a quality employee or purchasing employee or um, in someone in inventory management, all of those people, if they can get access to information very quickly and get access to the right information, then they can make better decisions that will benefit manufacturing in the United States. It'll benefit manufacturing in Maine. It'll benefit manufacturing in the world. And that's the ultimate goal of the industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, or what's referred to as Industry 4.0. So where does, let's transition. One of the key underlying aspects of all of those systems is data. And data needs to be moved. It needs to be collected in some areas. It needs to be moved to others. And I talked about it's almost like a, a, a mesh of data running through your entire company. And how do we move that around? And what people have been struggling with is, look, we've innovated on the in the cloud, and we've innovated with analytics, and we've innovated with AR and VR, and we've innovated with sensors. But the delivery of this data and the management of it and the integration of it with all these systems, there hadn't been a lot of innovation. And so, this what you're looking at now is a chart of one of the popular industrial media companies did a survey of, they sell their products to engineers, and their customers are engineers, people who read their magazines. And they did a survey of the engineers, said, what's the challenge of utilizing this data? They call it the IT-OT collaboration. And that's OT is the operations team, the team that runs the factory floor, IT being the team that supports the systems in the business. And what comes out of it is the challenges are on normalizing data, the challenges are on contextualizing data, the challenges are on connecting systems. And that those three combined end up being somewhere in 75% of the total challenges that people are seeing is, how do we work with this data? Very hard. It's hard to get it where it needs to be. It's hard to get it in a format that it's easy to use. This is where there's a new concept, or there's a new discipline that's being used today in category of focus of called industrial data ops. Now, industrial data ops is focused on this data architecture, this data mesh, and how do we effectively move data between different systems, whether they're sensors, whether they're machine controllers in the machinery, whether they're in different systems that it's going to. And it focuses on creating processes around data governance and semantic data and definitions, and creating an architecture, pulling in people that have more of an architectural view of data and of a system of systems, because that's really what we've got. We're no longer just pushing all this data into a single system. Now we're pushing it into tens or hundreds of systems. And then finally, you need new technology. There's new technology that needs to be put in place. In the industrial world, in a manufacturing plant, we always talk about the edge is at the core. The edge is the center. The edge is actually the product. So you start at the product, or you start at the machines that build the product, and you work out from that. In leveraging data hubs, leveraging unified namespaces and data models and open standards, we need to, in order to integrate all these systems. Now, HighByte, I'll bring this back to HighByte now. So HighByte is a software company. And where we fit into this whole environment is we're building the technology to provide industrial data ops. And so these became our requirements. And this is where our solution comes in. So HighByte has developed the HighByte Intelligence Hub. It's fundamentally a real-time data hub. It moves data. We can connect to lots of different systems. Excuse me. We can connect to sensors directly. We can connect to your automation equipment through protocols that your automation equipment support, and automation style protocols. We can connect into various IT systems and connect directly into databases or through various protocols that IT systems support. And we can push data to the web. So we make all these connections and we move data between different systems. But what's really unique about the HighByte solution, and and we've to date, we're really the only system that's focused on this, is that at the core of it is a modeling engine, and that allows you to ingest all this data, but then build it into models. And these models can be, if you're doing predictive maintenance, you build an asset model. So you're analyzing a motor, you build a model of a motor and all of the data points that need to be there, and that way when you analyze it for predict failure, you've got all the data sets, and every motor that you have in your factory will all look the same. Similarly, if you want to do quality analysis, you may be needing a model based on your product. So as the product is being built, you need to create these unique models for it that allow you to capture certain criteria about what happened during the manufacturing process. And then we store that. Maybe we store that in the cloud, maybe we store that in an on-premise database, but we store that in a database so that people can analyze it. So you create these models, and that's how we integrate systems so cleanly. So you create these models and you leverage the models to standardize and normalize and contextualize the data. So you recall 2 slides back, I said, what are the big challenges? It's connectivity, it's normalization of data, and it's contextualization of data. And I would argue that they missed one, which is standardization of data, which often when people talk about normalize and contextualize, standardization is included. Those 3 words really kind of go together and overlap. But by doing that, we're able to efficiently and effectively integrate all these different systems and create your data fabric, right? And create your data network so that we're able to move data wherever it needs to go, and you're able to manage and maintain that, because that's the second big challenge. The first one is setting it all up. Number 2 is what happens tomorrow. And what happens tomorrow is something changes. Either the process engineers realize they can optimize the factory, but they need to make changes to the programming. Well, you make changes to the programming, all of a sudden all your integrations break. At the same time, maybe you have a product change coming down the line and you need to make changes for that, or like, a major product model change if you're depending on the type of manufacturing you're in. Maybe you have a piece of machinery that needs to get replaced. There again, if you had custom coded, which is what typically people are doing today, then you have to go and open up all this code all over the company. You have to know exactly where that is. You have to open it up. You have to make changes and kind of rewire things. Well, with the HighByte Intelligence Hub, we provide you an application. This application was designed to integrate systems. So it's taking the custom coding out of integrating all these systems and creating an application that's a web-based application. It's all configuration. It's a completely codeless interface, and you're aligning. You're just configuring all these connections. You're making changes. You're aligning the data the way it needs to be aligned, and then you're enabling it, and all of a sudden the data is just flowing across your company and across your factory, across your enterprise. Many of our customers are looking at how do we aggregate data across the entire enterprise. Our customers in many cases are global corporations. They've got many different plants. Our customers to date have included people, I can't really use their names, but pulp and paper industry, pharmaceutical industry, some of the big pharmaceuticals that you've heard of involved in the coronavirus. We have one of them as a customer today, and we're working with another one who will be a customer shortly. We've got industrial products, anything from batteries to any sort of piece parts that you manufacture. We've got some wastewater companies, some jewelry and luxury goods companies. So it's really all over the map, and it's a very broad application, but it's companies that are realizing that they need to create this data fabric and they need to fix their data integration problems, because as they evolve and transform their business, they need a better way of managing the data piece, and that's really where HighByte's focused. So I want to finish off by talking about some of the resources that we've used here in Maine, and the companies and organizations that have been a huge help to us in our startup, in our ability to get going and get to where we are today. These are some of them. These are ones that have played key roles. Maine Technology Institute has been a huge source of just support. They're on our board of directors. They are constantly supportive of what we're doing and what we're producing. They've given us some financial support, but they also just provide us some knowledge support of. We took 3 people who had never started a business before, had worked in many businesses for our entire careers, so we had a lot of experience there, but we had never been entrepreneurs, and they've helped us get over that hump. Maine Venture Fund, they've been a big supporter of ours as well. They've invested in us, and the team is also on our board of directors. They're very useful, very great set of people. Startup Maine and Maine Startup Insider have really connected the technology community, certainly in Southern Maine, hopefully in Central Maine, and have also been supportive and have been great people, great organizations to work with. I would suggest that anyone reach out to them if you're interested. Maine Startup Insider is a periodic newsletter that's great to learn about what's going on in the startup community in Maine. And then the Finance Authority of Maine and Maine Angels have also been supporters with regards to investment and the different programs that Finance Authority of Maine has to support investment. So all these companies have been great to work with. Obviously, we've worked with a lot of other companies in the area. I hate to create the list because you always leave people off, but we've worked with Eaton Peabody, Purdy Powers, Portland Design Group, Cloudport was our initial place where we got started. That was our first office area. Today we're working out of the Public Works in Portland, and then Androscoggin Bank, and I'm sure I'm leaving off a number, but everyone has been really successful, really helpful, and we certainly appreciate all of their help and appreciate sessions like this because we're growing, we're a growing company. We'd love to tell our story. If anyone's looking for jobs, we're always looking. We've always got job listings. We're trying to double our company today. This year, we're currently at 7. We look to being at 14, 15 by the end of the year. In order to do that, we need some great talent. So please check us out. Check out what we're listing. We're going to be adding more listings. We've got 3 or 4 of them up today. We're going to be adding even more shortly. Feel free to reach out and communicate with us. Join our community on social. We've got a LinkedIn page that's very active, LinkedIn community. YouTube, we've got some great videos on the actual software and on various webinars that we've given. We're also active on Facebook and Twitter. And certainly if you have any interest in trying out the software, seeing how it works, we'd be happy to give you a presentation. We'd be happy to do a demonstration. We'd be happy to get you the software to download and install. With that, I guess I'll open it up to questions, Garvin.
John, thank you so much for that. Really wonderful. Awesome to hear just also about the interplay of manufacturing 2.0, if you will, and the role of HighByte in today's new manufacturing economy. And just for folks that are either listening now or later, you do see some links there to HighByte.com as well as HighByte.com/careers. So please check that out afterwards. John, where you feel comfortable, can you touch on kind of what your seed funding round looked like size-wise? I know you had a nice project timeline, but how did that snowball and kind of where are you today and where do you see yourself going funding-wise, where you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so I don't know that I want to share the exact amounts because that's all private information. Certainly, if someone has a specific question, we'd be happy to answer that offline. What
was your kind of first, maybe like what was it, an MTI approach at first? What kind of jump start?
Yeah, so we got started with some MTI grants, right? And those were back in 2019. And then in 2020, we had two rounds of funding. One was a seed round right as COVID hit. And the goal was that that was going to drive us into the second half of the year. And we would have a bunch of customers, and we would be we would have a follow-on round in the fall. Obviously, COVID hit, everything changed. We cut back our expenditures because all of a sudden we weren't traveling, we weren't going out to visit people. At the same time, um, sales slowed down dramatically for the first 4 or 5 months. So that had a big impact on us. So then what we ended up doing is doing a bridge round around the end of the year, and a lot of our investors in the March round joined us again in the bridge round, and then we are planning on raising money again in the this summer. So to date, I don't know the exact numbers, but we've raised in the 500 to $1 million range in terms of investment, and then we've also had some grants and some loans from MTI.
Awesome. And sounds like some really good nimbleness with some wonderful programs that represent.
Yeah, you definitely have to, in the last year, you've had to adjust, right? Our whole go-to-market changed. And it's not all for the bad. Being a startup, we don't have enough money to go out and visit companies every day. What I'm finding is that companies are actually more willing now to do business and to learn about you and to talk with you and to open up with you over the phone or over video chats like this than they were a year and a half ago. So it hasn't all been for the bad, and I think long term, in terms of the introduction and the adoption of technology throughout our entire community, if you will, through our home lives, our school lives, our work lives, people are rapidly adopted new technologies, and that's for the good. It's been a challenging year, but that's for the good for everyone, and ultimately it's actually going to accelerate some of our growth plans, because our customer base is just much more willing. For instance, in the past, they were very reluctant to move data up to the cloud. The manufacturing community were very resistant to that because of security, because they've never done it in the past, because they're just generally tend to be resistant to adopting new technologies, or slow. I won't say resistant, but just they want to test them out and make sure that they're really solid first. What's happened in the last year is it completely accelerated that. So in fact, many people would say that the cloud, pushing data up to the cloud makes it more secure than on-premise, just because the teams of people that work at AWS or Microsoft Azure or wherever are able to secure data much more effectively than some of these small manufacturers can. So there's been a lot of change, and we certainly have had to be nimble. We've had to adjust, and fortunately, the main organizations that we've been working with, Maine Venture Fund, MTI, they've also been really willing to work with us, make adjustments. They recognize the environment that we're in, and they've been really supportive of us continuing in our growth and continuing in our mission.
Great. Thank you for that. And you touched on this a little bit, but within that good context and what we saw overnight with regards to logistics and supply chains, whether it's onshoring, vertical integration, the need to always want to shorten those supply chains. Within that COVID context and moving forward, what kind of challenges or opportunities have you seen or expecting within supply chain and logistics, for example?
Yeah, there's a ton of change, right? There were definitely a number of challenges that came out that we all saw. In fact, the one that I always laughed at. So when you're on the inside and you're talking with pulp and paper companies, and You realize that the when it was a challenge to purchase toilet paper in back, what was that, April and May of last year, the general premise or the general assumption was that that was because everyone was hoarding it. That was not the truth. There may have been a little bit of hoarding it, but the biggest issue was that the supply chain for grocery stores and the supply chain which delivers to our homes, and the supply chain for offices, which is where we spend probably 50% of our waking hours or more, are completely different. We don't buy big cases and take them to our homes, but they do in the office. And the product is different, the supply chain is different, the delivery mechanism is different. Um, think about, it's not just our offices, it's also restaurants, it's also airports, it's, wherever. So when that shifted, the demand doubled essentially for the grocery store, but it went to zero for these other inventories. And the paper companies had never seen supply or demand shocks like that. It was just unheard of, and so they recovered over time, and they've done a great job of recovering. But it's things like that that people are becoming more aware of, whether it's that or whether it's you're in Texas and you have a freak freeze, and all of a sudden that has a big impact on your supply chain or the delivery of different things. There's a lot more focus in terms of managing inventory. There's a lot more focus in terms of evaluating risk and all that sort of thing. There's a lot more focus, like you had said, on buying local. And can my supplier be local? Micro fabrication environments. So there's a lot going on. There's certainly challenges when all of your parts are coming from China, because if they all come by boat, it could be multiple weeks, and then they have to get through the ports and everything else. Versus if you could purchase goods through a local supplier. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people questioning different things. It's a lot less expensive to manufacture. You can automate a lot more here in the U.S. You can be much more dynamic. So lots of technologies happening there, and I think there's just going to be a lot of change over the next 10 and 15 years. It's exciting.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And interesting dichotomy of what we sometimes assume are issues in the supply chain and what is also kind of market reorg in a way.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
With regards to HighByte's market, industry, or segment, do you mind just giving us a thumbnail sketch on what that looks like, the size of it, and any competition in that market industry, or first movers that you guys have looked at? It seems like you guys in many ways are a first mover.
Yeah.
What is that market industry? Where do we see it today? Where do we see it going?
Well, of course, the market's huge. Yeah, Garvin, massive market. But no, in reality, the um, the delivery of data is just growing, right? It's the consumption of it, whether it's through automated systems or through, presenting it to people within a corporation, is just growing. They need access to more information, and it's not just more, but good information and at the right time. It's you never know. You may only use 1% of that information, but you don't know which 1% you're going to use. So you got to get it all, and you have to have systems that can do that. The growth, people like McKinsey and others talk about the IoT or Industry 4.0 as literally trillion-dollar industries. Now, we're not. The piece that we're going after is not a trillion-dollar industry. But based on our calculations, it's in the billions. So it is a huge industry. Now, as I had said earlier, it's a slow-moving industry. So there's some people that are at the front end. There are some people at the back end. There are early adopters and there are late adopters. There are some people that have already solved the problem, and others that don't even know that they have the problem yet because they haven't got there in terms of adopting other technologies. So we're kind of like in the middle of multiple technologies changing all at once, um, which makes it exciting and it makes it challenging as well. So in terms of us and our competition and where we see ourselves in the market, um, I always tell people that our biggest competition is, or the people that we really want to kind of put out of business is the people that are coding these one-off integrations. So I always say it's Python. Like I compete against Python or Java or C Sharp, the programming languages which just allow you to rapidly integrate systems. And the problem is you're doing it in a way that's not scalable and it's not maintainable. So what we're providing is a solution to make that scalable and maintainable. Um, so that's kind of our competition is custom data integrations. There are some other solutions. We look at. I had talked about the hub, and we look at the hub, and we've got all these different applications. Some people have used some of those applications, like a database, as the integration piece. Um, we don't think that's efficient. There are many ways I can get into one-on-one with someone, but it's not efficient to use an application as as the pass-through. Um, However, so we see the need to provide this independent data fabric or data where the data hub, where we can push highly modeled and structured data to the different systems, and we do it in a way that's repeatable, that's standardizable, and that's maintainable. So when we look at the competition, we're the only ones that have pulled together this one feature set. There are other people that connect systems, but they don't structure that data along the way, so they only go part way. But being from the industry, Tony was at Kepler for 20 years. I was there for 8, and have been in the industry for 25 years. And so, us just seeing the industry, seeing it evolve. Actually, we spent 2 years at PTC. They're an IoT company, so looking at that industry, and we had such a deep knowledge of data and some of the challenges that we pieced things together. And at the same time that many others weren't, they were kind of ignoring this one piece. So we think that we've got we've got the potential to be really big um, in the industry, and we're starting to see that play out. So it's a lot of fun, but of course, you also want to scale in a defined way, and it takes time. Companies aren't just adopting new things from, as we say, we're creating a new category of software, we're creating a new company, and we're creating a new product. And when you combine all three of those, it takes time to execute on them, but we're making a huge amount of headway right now.
Uh, Thank you for that, John. Really incredible and exciting, and what a market segment. And maybe to that end, and if folks have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section or the chat feature. Where do we see, or where do you see HighByte within the next, say, 5 or 10 years? And do you have, if you feel comfortable or would like to touch on what an exit strategy looks like, but where do we see ourselves going? You've mentioned obviously in a growth kick right now.
Yeah, we're definitely growing right now, and we see huge potential to grow. Um, the 5 or 10 years, obviously we're looking out. The potential for leveraging data is not going to stop in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. The technologies are going to get more sophisticated. They're already getting there, and that means that we're constantly going to be adding additional technologies. We're very focused on manufacturing today. We see the potential of this to go well beyond manufacturing. Uh, I see us always being in the B2B space. I see us always being in some sort of almost an industrial goods, but the industry is moving into more autonomous edge activities. Um, we can be a central player in that. the ability to, I see the industry evolving where analytics today is primarily done in the cloud by some of the big players. I think in the future, it's almost going to be like spreadsheets. I don't know about you, but I probably got 20 or 50 spreadsheets in my computer right now, and every single one of us have them. And I think analytics are going to be the same way. Sorry, Rick, uh, but we all have them. It's the reality. Analytics are going to be the same way. A manufacturing company will get a special analytic from their vendor, and the vendor will update that. Machinery is going into more of a service environment. In the past, a vendor would deliver a piece of machinery, they'd walk away. In 20 years, they would come back because the machine lasted that long. They'd never see it, they'd never touch it. In the future, it's more like your smartphone or your computer. You're going to be downloading updates. The vendor's going to be learning things about that machinery because they're going to be collecting data from it and every other customer that they have. They're going to be learning about it, and they're going to send you updates that'll make that machinery run more efficiently for the environment that you're running it in. You're going to be getting analytics from consultants. You're going to be getting analytics from your own team that develop their own, because they know the dynamic of the line and the assembly of equipment that you've put together that they want to optimize on.
So I'm going to break the rules and not put my question in chat.
Go ahead, Rick.
If you don't mind. How much do you guys spin out into the analytics part then, and how much are you guys just the data collection engine side?
So I see us as the, so we can run at the edge and deliver the data to the analytic. We are not an analytic company. Our background is in analytics. Could we go there? Yes. I don't think that we will, because I think that analytics almost becomes commoditized. Today, that's the hot topic, analytics and visualization. But what's happening that I see is analytics is getting a lot easier, and it's going to get easy such that, it's kind of like spreadsheets back 40 years ago were really hard to use. Today, they're very easy to use. And analytics are going to go the same way. And so I don't want to tie us up to analytics. What we want to do is we recognize there's going to be, a company could have hundreds of them all over. They could be at the edge. They could be running in on-premise data centers. They could be running in the cloud. And every single one of them needs to get access to the data efficiently, consistently, in high quality, and that's what we want to be. It's to me, it's kind of like 20 years ago, or maybe even 30 years ago with Cisco, right? And Cisco came out and they said, the value is not in any one node, the value is in connecting the nodes, right? It's in the network. Well, we've taken that up from the physical network, which Cisco provided, to the data network, which is what we want to provide. Because the value is not in any one analytic or any one AR/VR headset or any one sensor. The value is actually in the mesh of all the data put together. So
I can say that listening to your presentation here, I've loved the fact that you guys know your space. That's been very, very refreshing to me, actually. You hear so many companies that want to do this and that, but you guys are staying in your guardrails.
Yeah, we're
really
focused.
Good. Yeah, it's really focused. So we use, and I've gotten very familiar in the last few years here with data lakes and that sort of stuff, but it's all to gear analytics. But we use Spotfire. It's almost to the point where if you're an advanced user, we'll pick on Garvin. Garvin could probably go and play around and create his own analytics BI front end and start telling a story. So
right.
And that's my today. Hands went up on the spreadsheets. If you've got a really good visual analytics tool, you don't need the spreadsheets anymore, because that's telling the story of why they wanted the spreadsheets. So
true.
That's really good. I love where you guys are. Yeah. Now, I played around with the Azure IT Hub when it first came out. I reached out to a couple of sensors, this typical how many cars have passed this street light type stuff. But I love the fact that you guys have started taking that model and put in sort of your engine in the middle to start breaking that data out, not just being a central spot to collect the data.
Exactly.
So that was a great model also.
Yeah, no, IoT Hub in Azure, and structuring the data for it. A lot of people were sending it up to it, and then you had to restructure it in Azure. And we're allowing companies at on-premise, the teams, to structure that data, add context, and then send it up so that whoever needs to get access to the data can. But yeah.
That was good. Now, are you guys doing an online subscription based for this data, or is it all sort of whatever the client wants to have? How is your model for that working?
So we are a software company.
Yep.
We provide the software. This software is generally installed on premises.
Okay.
Because that's where I always tell people, put our software as close to the highest volume of data as you have. And if they're going to use us to pull a lot of data out of the machinery, then they want us close to that. If we're pulling a lot of data out of their MES system, their manufacturing execution systems, or their enterprise resource planning systems, then put us close to that. Because generally, we're going to be pulling much more frequently than we're going to be pushing out, because we have a lot of optimizations within our solution to optimize that data flow. However, we do have some customers that are putting us in the cloud. So in that case, they're using some sensor vendors who are pushing data directly into the vendor's cloud. So you can imagine if you've got a pulp and paper mill and you want to measure the humidity near your wood pile and the temperature. You're a pulp and paper company. You don't want to manage all the IT around that, and it's outside. So why don't we just use a cellular sensor that can just push all that up to the cloud, to the vendor's cloud, and then you can just pull it back down into the systems that you need. So in some cases, we're doing things like that as well. So we can run, our software can run wherever, in the cloud, on premise, at the edge. Our packaging model is a subscription based.
All right, perfect. I do have to bounce to another meeting, but this was very good. Thank you very much for this presentations. I work with a couple of local companies around here, and may be able to convince a few people to reach out to you and have some further conversations.
Great.
This has been really good. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for joining us, Rick. It's nice talking to you.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Rick, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. John, thank you so much. An incredible presentation, and really at the cutting edge of innovation, particularly here in the state of Maine. So wonderful to just have HighByte inexorably linked now to Maine's growing ecosystem of innovation. So thank you. With that said, and if not seeing any other questions, I would like to again thank you, John, for joining us for this Network Tech Talk here. We so appreciate it. This will be uploaded for viewing at a later date. We have dropped appropriate contact information in the chat. You should be able to see that as well as a later date. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this afternoon: CGI, Thomas Colleges, Harold Alphon for Business Innovation, Valley Beverage, and Bricks Co-working Innovation Space. We look forward to seeing everybody next month for another wonderful talk. That will be April 8th at the noon hour, and that will be with Friday app. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, John, and please give our best to the rest of your team at HighByte. Cheers, and look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Great, thank you, Garvin. It was great to talk with your team, and thank you to the Maine Central Maine Growth Council and for hosting us. So we'll talk to you later, and certainly if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're on the internet and pretty easy to find. Thanks. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Wonderful. Cheers all.
Cheers. Bye.